It was getting close to the end of summer at a semi-tropical luxurious hotel in Gainesville, Florida. God had placed us in that hotel for a time as a stepping stone to where He would lead us next. It was so hot. The scorching sun would bake the land all day, and I found relief from the heat in the outside pool that was surrounded by lush trees, with just the perfect swirl of sun to keep my cheeks warm in the water. At that present moment, God had been telling me that He was taking us across the country to start a new journey somewhere else. Yet in a natural, I didn't have much money to spend. I also didn't have a car, so I was always gathering our supplies by foot. I would walk to Dollar General down the road and get things we could eat for cheap in a hotel room, like sandwiches and hot dogs. At the same time, I was faced with the fear of drought and lack, with no way to save myself at that moment. God was saying that He was taking us to a place that would be very expensive to get to. I had so many worries anytime I would see how limited I was financially in the physical realm. So I would comfort myself by using my faith to escape the heat of all the fears I had of having no money to survive. In the heat of the afternoon, I would go down to the pool in the center of the hotel property. I was able to find the perfect time when there were no other guests there, and I would get away from my worries by imagining that I had the abundance that God promised. I would give my worries to God as I swam to the center of the pool. Then I would lay on my back and float in the deepest part of the water. I imagined that I was in a private place that was secretly and protectively cared for by the Father. The deep water underneath me that was holding me up was God's endless wealth that He promised, the support of His promise to hold us up. At least that is what I would imagine, as though I was a child making believe. We were reaching a critical dead end at that place because football season was coming in that major college town. The word on the street was every hotel and Airbnb would book out solid for the entire season, and there would be nowhere to go once that happened. I was trying not to panic because not only did I have nowhere to go, but I had no way to leave financially and with no vehicle. Every day was a constant practice of trying to breathe, as the weight of my anxieties would build and build. Meditating on God's promise was the only way I could keep myself from having a full-blown meltdown. I had to stay calm and confident so that my children could feel the peace of knowing they were safe as well. I was trusting God to support us like He promised, and the kids were trusting me to take care of them as their only active parent. It was scary, and it was probably the most intense faith exercise I've ever known until then. Like a bolt of lightning striking out of the blue, one day God surprised me with $8,000 coming to one of my accounts. It was plenty enough to rent a car and cover our travel expense to go where God was leading us to. It was even enough to cover the beginning of staying in a new hotel in a new state that we were going. That was my first time of really seeing how lavishly God will provide when He is sending us somewhere new. I was stuck between a rock and a hard place, and God came through at the perfect time. He sent more that was needed and plenty left over to have extra breathing room. I am walking through a similar thing currently, yet again. There is a dead end ahead to where we are staying. God has been telling me He's taking us to a big city for a time to walk out my faith once again. He keeps saying it'll be very luxurious and with plenty of support. But in a natural, that's not how it looks. God keeps saying where He guides, He always provides, and that is true always. The most important and powerful revelation He has given me is that when He sends something big, to take a big leap of faith into something new, it is important that we dive in and live in His constant refilling and endless support system. This week, God has been talking to me about the monarch butterflies and how they also end up at the dead end that requires them to rise in order to survive. The monarch butterflies are too fragile to endure the harsh winters in the lowlands, so they fly into the high cloud mountains in southwestern Mexico. Up in that cloud forest, they cling to the oyamel fir trees, where they are bathed in luxurious support and protection. Their desperation to survive becomes a lavish getaway where they rise up to the highest peaks with the best views in the world. In a similar way, God will send us an increase, and He will rise us up as His safe protection from the warfare that the enemy has planned. The blessing is a rescue from God, and He will often ask us to take bigger risks of faith in order to keep rising over every attack. Going bigger with trust is a weapon, and through this time of living on God's promise in the midst of life or death circumstances, God often showed me that my choice to spend more to go where He leads is an ultimate form of worship, because we're trusting Him to be God, to always refill us, to always keep His word, to be our ever-present help. When we take big risks of faith, such as spending, and believing we have God's abundance, even in the uncertain fear of suffering lack again, we are placing God's promise over our own lives, fears, and doubts. Abundance is a mindset before it is anything else, and sometimes the way to overcome the warfare that is trying to take us out is to enter into the abundance of God's promise before it even arrives. There is so much peace in knowing that God has a path and a plan to cover all of our steps. He also has promised to always supply our needs with more than we are needing. Like a monarch butterfly that moves to a higher and more comfortable place in order to survive, God will elevate you, bless you, and promote you as a method of war. The rise is a weapon. There is a secret treasury of His blessing reserved for you, and when it looks like there's no way to survive any farther, that is a time to celebrate, because God is lifting you higher and opening up more of His opulent comforts and support. Instead of war and struggles, you'll be kicking up your heels as God treats you as His honored guest at the banquet table that is high above anything that your enemies have ever seen or had. Enjoy the blessings that are emerging to the surface for you now, because it is your sweet treat from the Father and your rest from the warfare that you have known.